Hey, good morning, everyone. I just wanted to make a quick video, hopefully genuinely quick this time, about the nature of Bitcoin, but not in the way that I normally do. I'm gonna start with I'm gonna paint a little picture for you. We all know Bitcoin is considered a lifeboat, and that's a very apt analogy because we have on a macro scale, we have something that's the equivalent of the Titanic, and everyone can see that this thing is headed toward the iceberg, and everyone can see that this ship is going to sink. And so we do have something of a lifeboat on offer to us in the shape of Bitcoin. But what we're looking at is a scenario that's actually I like to take the analogy a little bit further than most people do, in that, yes, it's a lifeboat. Yes, it's a means off of essentially a suicide mission that everyone has decided to embark on together, and that it requires a little bit of foresight and planning for you to not suffer the same fate as everyone else is. And your life can be saved very literally by heading onto this life raft and getting away from this sinking ship. But to take it further, as I want to, I'm going to say that it's not all fun and games. It's not as simple as getting off the Titanic, getting onto a lifeboat, and then relaxing. What's going to happen is there are only so many lifeboats, and there's going to be a struggle and a fight, and you're going to have to stake a claim, and you're going to need to prepare to fight. And I think what this looks like, well, actually I'll get to that in a minute, but there is nothing to stop someone bigger and stronger than you, who was less forward thinking than you, right at the last minute, jumping on your lifeboat, bringing his whole family along, throwing you off and all your children because there's not enough room for all of you, and saving himself and the people that are important to him, and throwing your life away. And you're going to have to fight to stay on that life raft, which means you're going to need to believe that it's firstly the only option you have, because this is a nice way to look at things. When you have a plan B, you won't do plan A properly. It makes sense to only have a plan A in life. If you have a plan A and then someone gives you an opportunity for a plan B, you won't fight for plan A like your life depends on it, because apparently you have another option. You don't. There is no other option than Bitcoin. If you want to not be absolutely miserably stricken by poverty, you're going to need to use Bitcoin. And there's no other way. Anyone that wants to equivocate about that is encouraging you to put yourself in a situation where it's the opposite of the don't put all your eggs in one basket thing. There is only one basket, and any eggs you do not put in it will be wasted. So you need to treat it quite the opposite as to how that analogy would inform your actions. So you're getting on a lifeboat, and you're doing that because you know there's no other option. And you're going to need to fight to stay there because there's only so much room on the lifeboat. There's only 21 million Bitcoin. By the nature of how Bitcoin works and the fact that it can save you, means that it is limited in its capacity for what it can do. Yes, it does help everyone collectively, and we all know about the tertiary benefits of Bitcoin, which spread far and wide. But fundamentally, what's coming in the near term right now, with how screwed up everything is, you're in a situation where things are getting very turbulent, and there's going to be a lot of violent, sudden change going on. The collapse of America is quite something to witness, and what happens as a result, what is coming, is so unpredictable that you need something that is going to be a Swiss Army knife, something that can do so much for you in so many different circumstances, and that is this functional, effective money we now have that we've never had before. So, I mean, people are looking like, I see it as the analogy for what I described, where some big guy comes on and throws all your family off the lifeboat so he can make room for himself and the people that matter to him. What I see as a metaphor, what I see that as being a metaphorical representation of when it comes to Bitcoin adoption, is I see a guy, a rich, ruthless person who has been spouting off about how Bitcoin's nonsense and a highly speculative asset for ages, but has managed to hold on to his wealth fairly well. He's still in a prestigious position. He's still a respected economist or whatever. He's still a tenured professor teaching economics at whatever university. Eventually, those guys get on board. And when they do, they're not going to play fair. And countries get on board. And I'm saying that we can expect dirty tactics from these people, because everyone's like, oh, we need favorable legislation, or, people like me are saying, oh, it would be great if Bitcoin was just illegal. But neither of these things are going to happen. What's going to happen is there's going to be punitive treatment of people trying to keep Bitcoin in certain liberty-preserving ways that defy the authorities and the what am I trying to say? The crony capitalists that want to rig everything to benefit themselves. They're not going to outright ban Bitcoin, but they're not going to just let you run wild and free with it either. They're going to do something roughly in the middle, where they 6102 the whole thing. They bifurcate the network. They attempt to get hold of as much of it as they can for themselves, and they try to shake you the fuck out of what it is you're holding. So this is how they're going to benefit themselves to the maximum. And you need to be really careful that you're set up to be able to handle that. This is why we're so adamant as Bitcoiners that you got to have your own self-custody. You can't, I don't know what the analogy for that is exactly with a lifeboat, but you need to be on a lifeboat and you need to understand where your seat is, and you need to be sitting in it. You don't need to put a piece of, in fact, that's perfect really, isn't it? You know all the seats are getting filled up on the lifeboats. You don't have a heart to go and, onto a lifeboat, grab someone, throw them in the water, and steal their seat, which is the equivalent of stealing people's bitcoins. I mean, that analogy holds up. But you're not going to be stupid and say, all right, this boat's sinking, but I want to stick on it for another half an hour. I'm going to go to a piece of paper, write my name on it, and leave it on one of the seats on the lifeboat, and that will certainly be respected. That's what having Bitcoin on an exchange is like during this transitionary period. It's not safe, it's not going to last, and it's not going to do what self-custodied Bitcoin can do, which is your ass in a seat on an orange boat floating away from this sinking ship. That's what you need to do. You need to stake your claim, and you need to make yourself in a situation where someone wants this seat, they got to grab you and throw you off, not just take a piece of paper on a seat and throw it in and flick it into the water. So what do I mean when I say these people are coming and they're not going to play fair, and they're going to bully everyone, and they're going to try and get all the Bitcoin for themselves? You make that easy for them when your Bitcoin's not in your custody. But we all know that, not your keys, not your coins. This is a well understood part of Bitcoin. But there are other things too. You don't want to be a forced seller in any circumstances, which means you need to structure things carefully. We've very recently seen an enormous crash in the price of Bitcoin. The biggest we've seen in recent times was March 2020, when it absolutely tanked all the way from around $10,000, a few days prior to the crash, to I think 3,800 was the lowest price it reached. If you were leveraged, you were wiped out. Even if you were very low level leveraged, you would have needed to add so much collateral to survive that most people wouldn't have been able to do it. These are not accidental events. People know what they're doing. I don't want to tip my hat to all the people that attempt to day trade Bitcoin, keep getting wrecked doing it, and then complain about how it's a manipulated market. You are creating your own issues, people, doing that. But that doesn't mean that the Bitcoin net price is completely free of manipulation either. I don't want to give a nod to people that use that to excuse their own degeneracy. But it still happens. And when lots of people are buying Bitcoin on leverage and they're being irresponsible financially and they're in over their head, they can get wiped out and forced to sell. And you don't want to be forced to sell something like Bitcoin, which means you can't buy as much of it as you might want to buy. So you have to be responsible. You have to be able to hold during these massive shakeouts, because someone will get on. They will get on the lifeboat and they will just shake it and they'll turn it upside down. Get all these fucking people off the lifeboat. I don't know who they are. I'll need to make room for my family and my mum and my uncle and my grandma and all these people I brought along on this boat ride. Fuck all these other people. What does that look like in Bitcoin? Massive price shakeouts, whether they're deliberate or not. But, this person might even be so reckless that they might destroy the boat while they're doing what they're doing, trying to shake you out of it. They don't care. They need to win this fight. They need to be prepared to scuttle the ship. The lifeboat, that is. So you got to have your feet tied in to the bottom of the boat. You got to be you got to handcuff yourself to any metal on the boat. You say, you're not getting rid of me. You're going to have to chop my arms off to get me off this boat. You got to have that much conviction about Bitcoin, because if you don't, you'll get kicked off and you'll sink with everyone else that didn't have the foresight you did. So yeah, I'll try and keep this video short, but I'm saying it's not just going to be buy Bitcoin and wait. Bitcoin fixes everything. World is a better place. War is impossible. No more governments, no more taxation. Eventually, I'm confident Bitcoin gets us there, but in the meantime, you don't want to get wrecked, which means you need to be careful and you need to be cautious. So please be responsible, people. Treat Bitcoin seriously enough that you don't get degenerate with it and you don't forget to respect the fact that other people are going to come along who are not nice people, who are going to try and save their own lives, and they're going to fight to the death to be able to do it. So you need to put yourself in a situation where you can resist extreme behavior. And one thing I wanted to say is, you'll get these events like big changes in legislation, and the rumors of these things can cause the price to drop a lot. And I think, given what we're seeing today, I haven't looked into the Biden administration's crypto bill or anything. I don't really give a shit about it, but that's the situation you want to be in. I don't need to give a shit about it, but if I was leveraged up the wazoo, then I would need to give a shit about it. So don't be leveraged. Maybe it's the overall point of this video, but I just kind of want people to see Bitcoin the way I see it, which is it's your lifeboat, and if you don't take it seriously, then you're going to get thrown off that lifeboat and you're going to die with everyone else. So learn what taking it seriously means, and there's a lot that goes into that. And check out the rest of the videos on this channel if you get a chance, because it takes years to develop the correct perspective on Bitcoin, and mine is, I'm not going to say it's the correct perspective, but it's changed so many times, and it's been informed by so much experience and information that I would say that people have to. I'd say that at least for me, it wasn't easy to look at Bitcoin and go, oh yeah, easy. And I've got it faster than most people you're likely to meet. And I've spent more time studying it than most people you're likely to meet. And I'm telling you that it's not something you can just look at and pick up and quickly understand and go, okay, yeah, I think I've got the idea, do X, Y, Z, easy. It's too different and it's too complicated it's too different to anything we've ever used before and from our current existing system, for it to be just sort of understood casually. It needs to be deeply understood and pursued as not just a hobby, but a deep committed passion. And I'm encouraging you to keep on with that and to keep going with it, because you absolutely need to, otherwise there's just going to be a flood that wipes out 99% of people, and you don't want to be part of that. You don't want to be swept up in that and just discarded by the laws of economics and just thrown to the side. Like you need to nail your courage to the post, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You've got to seriously commit to this thing, and you need to do what you need to do to be able to do that, which means you got to have it backed by a firm and first principles based understanding, so that you can say, no, I figured this out for myself, and as a result of that, no one can convince me otherwise. I'm not built my house on sand here. I've built my house out of bricks. All of my understandings are solid. I will listen, I will learn new information, but as far as I can tell, this is the right way to go. And I've done a sincere inquiry into what is going on, and I think I've found the solution. And 99% around people around me are jokers. They haven't done any of the work that I've done, so I'm not going to listen to them. I'm able to listen to them, and I know that they're nonsense. I know that they haven't done any sort of planning. I know they haven't done any sort of research. I know they don't know anything about the nature of the money they're using. I know they don't know anything about the nature of how Bitcoin and how it is different to that. These people are not going to make it. I'm going to make it. That's the sort of mentality you need to get, and you need to get there by it's beautifully reminiscent of mining, right? Because it's still just proof of work. You need to actually do the work. You need to actually understand Bitcoin, and there's no shortcut to that. You just need to do it, and when you do it, you'll develop the kind of conviction you need to be able to withstand the coming onslaught. Because I just think we've had the gifts, we've had the massive crashes in the past. We know Bitcoin can and will do it, and we know Bitcoin's still small enough that we can do these violent crashes. And I'm just telling you, if Bitcoin, a lot of people think, if Bitcoin goes under $10,000, it's done. People that think that, they couldn't be more wrong, because all that's going to happen is Bitcoin has this way of making its way into the hands of people with the most conviction and the deepest understanding of it. Who are those people? They are the most intelligent and consistent people around. They're the people with the lowest time preference. They are the people who win in the end. Even old Warren Buffett's knowledge is correct here. The market is a tool for moving money from the impatient to the patient. And that's just a comment on the time preference of people that win in the end. You need to have a long-term mentality. And the kinds of people that would see Bitcoin drop below $10,000 in 2022 or 2023, the kind of people that could see that and go, I'm going to buy this thing. Oh my God, are those people going to win so big? And anyone that thinks Bitcoin is dead in those circumstances is why those other people keep winning, and why the people that, the trend followers, the lemmings, just are going to keep falling off cliffs all the time, because they don't have the conviction and the depth of understanding required. And it's heartbreaking, but you can't save these people. But do not be one of these people, is my point. You need to have a deep commitment here, and that's at the risk of repeating myself. Well, in order to avoid repeating myself, I'm just going to end the video. But deep conviction commitment is required here. If you don't have that, you might as well just not do it at all. You'll just lose money. This is why I say don't buy Bitcoin to people. I say it to most people. I'm like, if you don't dip your toes in the water, don't do any of this stuff. Understand it, learn it, and then realize that this is the only way. And then you've got to keep your whole life savings in it, and you've got to do that in a certain respectful manner where you actually use Bitcoin the way it's intended to be used. You've got to go the whole hog. This is why, if you come to me, talk about Bitcoin, if you're listening to me, you're going to walk away, and you're going to walk away going home to place an order on coinkite.com. You're going to buy a cold card, you're going to buy a seed plate, you're going to buy a safe, you're going to buy a bunch of evidence bags, you're going to buy a Raspberry Pi, you're going to be running a Bitcoin node. You're going to be doing it all, because there's just, I don't do the halfway steps. I don't do it because people get stuck. People, okay, some of it's on a path, and I respect that path-based approach of okay, get a phone wallet, okay, now get a Trezor, okay, now connect the Trezor to a full node, okay, now you're fully, no, I don't do it like that, because people stop along the way and forget about it, and then they think it's good enough, and it just really isn't. The only reason that I went along, I'm extending the video here, but the only reason I went along a path like that is because I went with what was possible at the time. There were no hardware wallets when I started, so I had to print Bitcoin private keys off of bitaddress.org using an air-gapped machine and a dumb printer, and then getting some laminate, because that was the forefront of knowledge. It was if you do print a private key, don't leave it unlaminated, because you might spill some liquid on it, and then you won't have your private keys anymore, and your Bitcoins will be gone. That was new knowledge to us when that guy posted that post on bitcointalk.org saying that he just spilt whiskey all over his private keys, and now his Bitcoins were all gone. So then we all started laminating our private keys, but those private keys were still generated by using JavaScript on an offline website, and then print it off with a print. Like, there's a million things that can go wrong there. So eventually we got a hardware wallet. Trezor came around, and it was great. We started buying Trezors. We generated, hopefully secure private keys, and we would store Bitcoins that way. But guess what? There weren't really any good software wallets around at the time. We would just use Trezor's interface, a web interface, connected to all of Trezor's full nodes. So even if you did run a full node, there was no way for your Bitcoin core to interact with it. So you could verify the transactions manually, of course, but you were still asking Trezor's permission to broadcast transactions. You still had to use their interface, which connected to their node. Things have improved dramatically these days, but that doesn't mean you get to go through all of the shitty steps that we went through before. I don't think it's appropriate to do that. I think when you go for it now, you can build your own hardware wallet if you want. You can flip coins and generate a private key if you want, but that, I think, is a bit too theoretical. I think you can do that all, in theory, but I don't think you need to do it in practice to learn. I think you can just look at the theory of how, private key generation can work by flipping a coin, and you can generate a private key that way. But my suggestion with most people is just get a cold card, get a full node, connect a software wallet to the full node, and upload your wallet, the skeleton, into the software wallet from your cold card, and receive some fucking Bitcoin, and do it like that. I don't think there's another way at the moment. That's the only reliable way I know of to get your Bitcoin and to get it in self-custody and to do the whole thing properly. And I just can't advise anyone on anything else. And sometimes people get stuck along the way. And I accept that this is not everyone's approach, but this is my approach teaching. Sometimes people will be like, huh? When I send them the email after the lesson. And they're just like, okay, that was like a book, mate. I'm not going to do all of that. In fact, I'm just not going to do anything. Fuck it. And I've seen people do this, but I'm sorry, I can't give you halfway house advice. I can't be like, oh, just buy a ledger, or just, make an account with ShakePay or Coinbase and buy some Bitcoin and just leave it on the exchange. Like, I just can't do it. I would genuinely just rather you didn't have the illusion of being in Bitcoin. I genuinely don't want to give people, I don't want people to go down that path, even though it can be a path to being a proper Bitcoiner and having full self-custody and all that stuff. It can be a path to that, but it isn't always, and I don't want to lend people down. I definitely won't ever recommend anything that isn't a cold card. I can't ever recommend a hardware wallet that engages in shitcoinery. I can't do it. Even though they're much easier to use than cold cards, Trezors and ledgers are definitely easier to use than cold cards. But that's only because they ditch the requirement to having a full node, and they make it very, very user friendly. Cold cards are harder to use, and they only offer Bitcoin, which is a disadvantage, but then an advantage. And I don't want people to be shitcoining ever, so I'm never going to recommend anything that isn't a cold card for that reason. Well, there are alternatives that are just Bitcoin only, but I have no incentive to try them out, really, because cold card is that good. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to end the video there. Just don't get shaken out. Stake your claim on the lifeboat. No one's getting you off that fucking lifeboat. No one is getting you off it. But I'm going to finish with that quote from Mark Moss. Not Mark Moss. I'm talking about Mark Passio. Mark Moss is a Bitcoiner, but Mark Passio, I don't know if he's into Bitcoin, but he says, you must know to be able to say no, which is a great point. How are you going to say no with any conviction to someone that's trying to coerce you into doing something you maybe don't want to do? You've got to know what it is you want and what it is you don't want. You've got to have figured this out, and you've got to base it off principles that are very true to you. If all of your stuff is lightweight and all of your ideas are received wisdom and nonsense you read in textbooks and, things that blue check marks have been telling you, and actually, if all of your knowledge is actually kinds of knowledge, like, oh, apparently this, the earth is really pear-shaped, it's not quite round, and all these, just stuff you mindlessly accept from perceived people in positions of wisdom and authority and all that. If your ideas are all based on that, you're not going to make it, because someone will come along and just say, oh, you shouldn't be on this lifeboat, go on that one, it's better. And you'll be like, oh, maybe, I don't know. No, you need to know in order to be able to say no. If you want to say I'm not getting off this lifeboat, I am not. I'm not buying shit coins. I'm not selling. I'm not taking anything off the table. My ass is not moving. It's firmly planted in this particular seat on this orange lifeboat. That requires conviction, and conviction is irrational unless it's based on a lot of work. So you got to do the work, then you got to develop the conviction as a result of doing that work. And then when someone comes along and tries to say, "Hey, can I take your seat? I saw a guy over there. He wanted to hang out with you." Like, you're gonna say, "I know that there's no alternative for me, so I am saying no to your suggestion, sir." That's what you got to do. All right, I'm ending it here. Thanks, guys. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and speak to you all later.